Okay, Dave, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. I'm your host, David Gaspers, and I'm with Honky.
Redcast Nation has officially passed La Vista to become the 12th largest city in Nebraska. And you're next, North Platte. We're coming for you.
How much further is North Platte away from us? Huh?
It's quite a ways. We're just over 16,700 now, but we have to hit like 23,000. So people,
All right. Well, since we're like practically YouTube TV versions or whatever it is, maybe we can make some big gains with the YouTube streaming. All right, sounds good. Also, Redcast Rob.
Hey guys, look, I'm just going to put it out there right now. I am so sick and tired of everyone saying that all I'm doing is drinking the Kool-Aid. All right. That's just not the way it is.
Rob is drinking Kool-Aid. The podcast is so much better with live streamed. Also with Boomer.
Well, I just want Rob to know I didn't let anyone in the public know that you were podcasting with a broken jaw for several months last season. So you're able to spill that to everybody in the public first. So no worries here.
The way Dave can never get me to shut up. You'd be surprised that was even true.
Yeah, I wish I gave him the broken jaw. Honk, we've got some football to cover, and I think we'll do a baseball preview, it sounds like. We did have Redcast Rob do a interview with one of our incoming transfer recruits. Rob, you want to tell us all about that?
Yeah, I interviewed Kevin Williams Jr. yesterday. He's kind of preparing himself to play either tackle or guard on the offensive line. But one thing I can say is that he is 100% starter in the confidence division. He wants to come in and make a difference on this team right away. He's a, local kid out of Omaha, went to a couple different high schools out there and then played for UNC locally here in Greeley. And, he just gave us some really good insight. It's definitely worth a listen. He talked a lot about the off-season programs that they've been doing, kind of, I don't want to call them games, but some of the in-team competitions that they're doing, some of the early morning run stuff. He's loving the fact that there's an indoor facility that, he talked a little bit about the meal program. And then it was kind of cool. He gave us some really good insight into, his family life and kind of what they do for the Omaha community from a mental health perspective. His dad's business working with teens between the age of 14 and 19, and helping them kind of, instead of getting working through the system, we'll call it. So it was a great time. Yeah.
And Rob, it was interesting timing too, because after he got done with our interview, that's when he ended up being interviewed by Husker. Husker is basically the social media for the athletic department, because then they posted a video of him that he did like an hour after our interview
or something like that. Yeah. And it's funny because, he says a lot of the same things he said on ours. So, you know what, I will say that if the other guys on the team have half of the positive attitude about what the Huskers are going to look like this year, I'm feeling pretty good about it. But maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid.
Well, we do know, Rob, that you're definitely drinking the Kool-Aid. that I'm certain of. Honky, other Husker football related news that you want to cover today?
Well, I think something that kind of ties in with what the interview with Kevin talked about quite a bit was the aggressiveness that we're going to see with the offense. And there were some articles, and I know that we read them over the last week. One where they interviewed former Husker offensive lineman and Creighton Prep coach Bob Sledge. He's also the dad of Husker football target Sam Sledge, all offensive linemen, right? And Bob, any Husker fan that remembers him from back in the 80s, he was all conference, a great player for us. And anyways, he talks about Raiola's style being old school, physical football there. It's about getting off the ball, staying low, striking a guy and just driving him. And this particular quote really struck me was all of his drills are at least 10 yards. And I think about, some of the different coaches clinics that I've been to also under when Austin was the coach. You have a lot of things that are right at the line of scrimmage, hand placement, 1 yard kind of drills where you're hitting somebody, you're punching. And those are all important, skills and drills to be doing too. But the idea that these drills are going to be 10 yards, man, we're about driving people. We're moving them out of the way. We're not just zone blocking you and having a running back cut off you. We're going to just physically move you out of the spot that you're in right now. And holy smokes. I mean, talking to, I guess I was listening in on it yesterday, gave Rob the limelight there, and he deserved it. He set all that up. But to have Kevin basically say all those same things, mirroring what his coach is talking about. He loves to play that style of football. That's what a guard plays, he said. He talks about if he's a tackle, then there's a little bit different skill sets there. He'd have to lose some weight if he wanted to get to be that tackle spot, but he thinks he can do that too. But in the middle, in the guard spot is where you're just being a Hulk basically and throwing guys around. So I just thought that was really interesting. And for us, that's bringing that physical football back. And one of the things that we asked at the very end that is also important, Dave, to the Redcast and has been since the beginning is recruiting in-state kids and recruiting local. And we asked him about, what it meant, for Frost in the last week to send his entire coaching staff to the Omaha coaches clinic that they had Wednesday night a week ago. And what a big deal that is. That, that's a sign that's showing that we're doing something a little different than what we've been doing in the past. That's how important it is. And he talked about it. He's like, yeah, the talent in this town or in this city, this metro area for football, for basketball, it's crazy, and we can't be losing it. And I'm just really glad that we've got Kevin Williams here in Lincoln this year.
One of the things that he said too, and I was listening, but I don't remember if you mentioned, but he was just saying that there was some animosity from him too about it because he was recruited or wasn't recruited by Nebraska coming out of high school, and he felt some animosity, and that was just kind of some of the feelings that he was having towards the program, even when Frost and them were sitting in his living room recruiting him, and
even though it wasn't them recruiting him,
and even though it wasn't him, and he said that he had to convince himself, that was the case, that he was, that was the previous regime. He can't blame them for that. But he also gave some pretty good indications that a lot of kids are starting to feel the same way he does, where they're starting to see that these guys really want to recruit in state. So I thought that was positive.
He wasn't recruited by Riley and staff, which is why he went to UNC in the first place. He also had some great issues there, which he talked about at length about how important that is. And with some of the stuff that he does off the field, working with kids and everything, is telling them how important getting the education piece is. But basically, that now when Frost was in here the second time around, he's back and he's ready to go for us.
Hank, with coaching changes, when we're talking about at the top, typically it seems like sometimes a program will go from one style of coach to a completely different, and the transition can be kind of painful. With a position coach situation here with offensive line and going from more kind of this seems like a little more of a passive zone blocking type scheme that Greg Austin apparently adhered to, which has been successful elsewhere. It's lots of devoted followers to that, and a more aggressive push you out of the way mentality that Dominic Raiola apparently believes in. Do you feel like there's going to be any sort of transition for the players to really learn how to do what Dom is trying to ask them to do?
Well, what's interesting, Kevin made a statement, and I can't remember if it was on air, Rob, or if he said before or after when we were listening into him, but he made a statement about how doing this is what he was doing in high school. This is, you're just plowing people over. And then you get to the college level and you start learning some of this zone blocking, and it gets so technical in some of the things that they do to the point of where you lose some of the aggressiveness. And he talked about coming back here, playing, being coached by Raiola and learning what he wants him to do. And he's like, this is like going back to high school for me. That actually, it's simplified. It's brought back some of the fun, some of the things that he really enjoyed doing to begin with. I think this is an easier transition to go than the other way. If we were trying to go from, kind of a man gap blocking to zone, and you're trying to teach that, I think that's more of a stretch. This is, you're going to be physical. I can't say it how many times he talked about.
I guess what makes
the team's going to feel us the next day. He just said that over and over again.
No, it's great to hear. I'd be excited to see that, obviously. It does take an offensive line then that is bigger and stronger than the opposing defensive line. And from a depth perception as well, can you hold up the whole game that way? So I think that'll be really interesting to see if we can have the strength and conditioning for offensive line to play that way for 4 quarters against Big Ten D linemen.
And he talked about the conditioning piece that which is exactly what they're going through right now and how important that is and how much the running that they're doing. I mean, this isn't just being strong and physical and pushing somebody. You're going to be moving around, and that can be everything from pulling outside and getting downfield on guys. I mean, they're going to ask plenty of them. One of the things that is interesting to me, and I don't know the answer to this yet, when you first started asking that, when you talk about like going from one coach to the next, and sometimes it's they bring in not just somebody that schematically is different, but somebody that is, just their
personality wise,
their personality is different. Yeah. I don't know right now how different Raiola is from Austin. I don't know. I don't really know either of them well enough to get that
really?
Deep
you don't
it.
know them that well. I'll be darned.
But I would say that both of them seem to kind of be more quiet and under the radar kind of coaches to begin with. So I don't think I'm making a guess here, but I don't think it's going to be some huge leap for the guys to adjust to Raiola from that perspective, just from how, he acts and talks and everything in the room.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Omaha recruiting, Boomer, I saw today that I think it's Zach Flores, the Gretna quarterback, just got offered by Oklahoma State, which I think he already had K-State. So now he has 2 Power 5 offers from old Big 12 foes. But we still don't have Nebraska offering him. It is interesting. Obviously you can't take everyone every single year, but it is kind of intriguing to see him with 2 Power 5 offers now and not one from the home state.
Yeah, and I will be curious to see if that offer does get extended. I suppose it kind of depends what we think we have in the quarterback room. And what class is he? 2023?
2023.
Yeah, okay. We have a couple other targets, obviously.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's how they're going to play that. Just going to see how the other targets pan out first, and then offer. Like you said, you can't take everybody, and sometimes just the local guy isn't what you need at the time. So, but it's worth keeping an eye on. Like I said, once you're starting to get those bigger offers, then
Honky, I could imagine that they might be waiting to actually see him throw in person at one of their camps or something. But obviously you don't want to see him slow play him either if you think he's qualified for a scholarship.
Yeah, because I don't know if K-State or Oklahoma State's had a chance to see him in a camp either, right? And they pulled the trigger. And I don't know that we've had a chance to see every single guy at every position that we ever, offer either. I can tell you this right now, and I've got it in front of me, the 2023 class of in-state offers and commits so far. We have 2 in-state commits, Gunnar Gottschala, the offensive lineman from Southeast, Lincoln Southeast, Benjamin Bramer, the tight end from Pierce. So right away, we already have 2 commits, and neither of them are from the Omaha Metro. And I want to separate that for a second. This is more of an exercise to show the depth in this state and where they're coming from. So you have a Pierce guy and a Lincoln Southeast guy. We have a couple offers out to a couple of Omaha area guys. Both of them legacies. Maverick Noonan from Elkhorn South. He's a defensive end outside linebacker. Sam Sledge, I mentioned him earlier, son of Bob Sledge from Creighton Prep, 6'4", 265. We also have an offer out to Lincoln East wide receiver Malachi Coleman, I think he's like a 6'5" receiver. Okay, so that's 5 guys right now. We also, there's a good chance, I think we'll at some point have an offer out to Lincoln High wide receiver Benny Nagoy, 6'4". Scottsbluff's offensive tackle Brock Knudsen is 6'7". He has offers from Colorado State, Iowa State, Kansas, North Dakota State. And I know he's on the radar, and it wouldn't shock me at all if by the end of the year he has one. And then on top of that, Gretna's Zane Flores, the quarterback commit, or the quarterback that you're talking about that has offers right now from K-State and Oklahoma State. So that's 8 kids. And they're all across the state, literally from Scottsbluff and up to Pierce, and Lincoln is finally getting back into the mix there with 3 guys that are mentioned. And so it's not just Omaha, but Omaha is hugely important, as Coach Frost and staff showed a week ago going down there with their coaches clinic. But it's a all hands on deck approach to get this state. And if you get this state, 2024, Caleb Benning and Daniel Kalen and Devon Hall, 2025, Tyson Terry and Christian Jones already. This staff is sending the offers out. And, those in-state kids, get to camps here and get your film seen. This staff wants to look at you.
So I'm curious too, and this is more of a question for you guys because you guys follow the recruiting a lot more, but you're saying that there's all these kids that are starting to get offers from D1 schools in the state of Nebraska, right? And that there's a lot of talent that's showing there. How much pressure do you think some of these other schools are having to offer these kids so early because they know that Frost and company are starting to look at those kids more, right? And they know that, if they put off offering these kids too long, that they may just get snatched up quicker by Nebraska. Is that something you guys think is going on, or?
It's hard to say. I mean, K-State typically seems to get one guy from us almost every other year at this point. So yeah.
Stinger from Millard West was going to K-State before Nebraska offered. The Columbus SCOTUS kid this last year, the tight end, for the life of me, I can't remember his name. And he, that's my alma mater. And anyways, he went to K-State.
He went to K-State. Yeah, he's up. That's a Power 5 offense.
Scholarship kid. Yeah. I mean, the city of Columbus had 2 kids last year go Power 5. Dave, Columbus High's, Houseman, obviously, is at Nebraska. So there is talent in the state. You definitely have to go and, identify it and go after it. I will say, I don't think that Oklahoma State and Kansas State are offering kids if they don't, they're not just offering early just for the sake of it. And they're not trying to make us look bad by doing it. I mean, they're sending an offer out because they think that this kid can play for them. They think that these Nebraska kids can play for them when they offer them. So, we're certainly, nobody's scared to come in here and offer a kid. They'll do it. They've seen enough times now where someone's left. But I like at least what we've done up to this point to get ourselves ahead of the game. And it'll be interesting with Flores. I don't know. I mean, there could be an offer coming for him. Mickey Joseph's made it very clear that, we're not going to just let teams come in and take our guys and, without a fight. And so we'll see what happens, I guess.
Iowa notoriously has come in and got Nebraska kids for, a decade or more under Ferentz, but not last year, right? I mean, that was a year that they did not get anybody from Nebraska last year, right?
Not
as in this class. I mean, obviously,
not this class. A year ago
been Keegan Johnson, but not this year.
Yep, that is correct.
Yep.
Speaking of quarterback, we had our mailbag last week, Dave, and we had a late mailbag question. Jim in Minnesota wanted me to ask this, and he goes, "This is a late mailbag question, but how differently would we view Logan Smothers in relation to this quarterback starting job battle, since we all think that he'll transfer out?" This is what he wrote, that he'll transfer out if he had successfully QB'd us to a win versus Iowa. So, in the first half, I think he was like 5 for 5 or whatever. He started off hot. We were ahead of Iowa in the first half. If he goes on the full game, we beat Iowa by 10 points or whatever. Would we view the quarterback competition differently right now? Would we view Logan differently, in your opinion, kind of coming off of that game? But obviously we didn't win it. So, now all of a sudden people just assume it's Thompson or just assume it's Purdy.
Well, I mean, maybe Boomer has a different opinion, I guess, here, but I guess I feel like the initial reaction is going to be more emotional, right? And you're gonna be like, he beat Iowa. Of course, he's our starting quarterback next year, or he's their apparent or whatever, right? But then I think at least fans like us that are going to actually pay attention to the stats and really think more analytically about how his performance played out and maybe, really evaluate that for what it was would probably be a little more tempered, I guess, right? I mean, winning the game's important. Don't get me wrong. We haven't got enough of those in the last 2 years. So I think it would make a difference to Jim's question. Would it be enough to be like, well, no, let's not worry about anybody else, and Logan Smothers is our quarterback, or he's our quarterback after Casey Thompson's 1 year here? I don't know about that. I mean, I feel like they made the right move in getting more competition in that room. And I think Logan Smothers isn't going to transfer immediately. I sure hope he doesn't, because I think he can compete for, if not the starting job, at least the second spot this year. And we'll go from there.
Yeah. Boomer, do you have something?
Oh, I was thinking, beating Iowa would have been nice, but at the end of the day, we would have still been a 4-8 team. And I think if you still go out and bring in somebody like Casey Thompson, he becomes the shiny new object that everybody sees with all the star ratings, and coming from a program like Texas where he puts up lots of numbers. I think people would have been excited for that regardless. It's just human nature to kind of want that next thing. The grass is greener with this new guy coming in.
It's crazy though. You mentioned that, we would have just been a 4-8 team, but look, we brought in Casey Thompson and he didn't come from some 8-4 or 9-3 team.
Oh yeah, I'm well aware of that. Yeah,
albeit
sure.
We understand why Texas didn't go 9-3. And it wasn't because Casey Thompson put up poor numbers against, Oklahoma, where he had 5 touchdowns, or all 7 touchdowns scored against Kansas in a loss. It's not about that, but it's just interesting that, to Dave's point, I think, you still are going to go after depth. There's no doubt. If you felt really strong about some others, do you only go after one quarterback versus 2? I don't know. I mean, that maybe is the discussion, but I don't think the discussion would have been, hey, we beat Iowa and now there's no need to, nope, we're good. No need to bring in anybody else. I don't think it would have been that kind of discussion either.
Yeah, and it would have been interesting if they would have just gone for, Casey Thompson more limited time, or do you try to find somebody like Purdy who's going to be here theoretically a lot longer in that case if you only went after one? So yeah, it's interesting hypothetical, but that's all it is at this point, sadly.
All right, Honk. Other football related news you want to tackle here before we turn to baseball?
Okay. Well, one other thing, and then maybe a little bit of social media, but
sure.
I read a couple of different articles this last week, and it was talking about the changes that have been going on in the Big Ten, specifically in teams that are on our schedule too, not just the Big Ten teams. I mean, Oklahoma's switched coach and coordinators and everything. And we focus so much on our own team for all the obvious reasons, but how unique is it that we have a new coordinator now? We're replacing some of these position coaches, and a grand total right now, there are 2 in the Big Ten. There are 2 new head coaches, 4 schools with entirely new sets of coordinators, and 13 new coordinators, some of which have not been hired among Nebraska's 11 FBS opponents. Let me be clear there. Among our 11 FBS opponents, that's what it is. 2 new head coaches, 4 coaches, 4 schools with entirely new sets of coordinators, 13 new coordinators, and some of them haven't been hired yet. Overall, 11 of 14 Big Ten schools are replacing at least one coordinator. And kind of the outlier to this, and no shocker, no changes for Iowa and no changes for Northwestern. So Nebraska's first and last game of the season next year, there's no changes in at least at the coordinator level. But
when you have offensive output the way Iowa and Northwestern do, you don't want to muck with that formula. Yeah,
I was going to say, there's Hawkeye fans that are probably wishing that there would be a little bit of change, at least on the offensive side, right? But so we focus on wow, this is change, and what is change going to look like, and how do we that it's unsettling when you're trying to predict the next season. But literally, you look at the Big Ten right now, there's change everywhere. We are far from being unique in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. Boomer, I think we had a YouTube comment.
Yes, one of our loyal listeners, Benjamin Dangle, he was commenting on the Flores situation. He said that we have 2 other quarterbacks on the board ahead of Flores with Avery Johnson and J.J. Cole. So said he can't offer everybody. So
no, well, I mean, I think it's absolutely true. I mean, I think Avery Johnson's from Kansas, actually.
Sure.
Right. And is high on other people's boards. J.J. Cole is from, I want to say he's from Wisconsin just because of that last name, but I don't think that's the case.
Is he from, I don't remember where he's from.
But
Iowa? Is he from Iowa?
Yeah, that might be the case. But yeah, I mean, I think you have to be cautious there. I mean, I guess I'll throw this to Honky. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, if you think Flores is good enough to get a scholarship and he's in state, and the only reason you're not offering him is because you only have room for one quarterback in this class, I think they should rethink that, because if you got a local kid who is going to be in the program and is less likely to transfer out, and maybe goes through a few more years before he really has to start, before he feels like he's like, oh, this is a bust, and he moves on, that's going to be someone like Flores, I'm thinking, right? Whereas, and so I in that instance, I think you take 2 quarterbacks in a class because you have a local kid that is worthy of it, right? And you have depth that actually can learn the system and actually be in it for multiple years.
Yeah, JJ Cole's from Ankeny, Iowa, and then the other one is from Kansas. So I mean, they are 500-mile radius QBs. But yeah, my only point ever with in-state kids, you can't offer them all, and I've never said you can or that you should. If they're worth offering, you offer. You don't slow play them, and so that's all I've ever said about it. And that's not in direct I'm not directing that at Flores or any one particular player. It's just if they're worthy of what the coaching staff is looking at for the position, then you do it. And so we'll see. I mean, I haven't evaluated film of Flores or anything. I'm in no position to sit there and say they should be offering the kid or not. And I'm pretty sure that the staff knows who he is. So that's good too. I don't think they're intentionally not offering, right? I'm looking more at trends and the trends of what they're doing, sending that staff down to Omaha, the trend that they're doing with all the offers that I just mentioned already, basically in the 2023 class, going into 24, going into 25, Rob bringing Kevin Williams back from Northern Colorado. That wasn't just a transfer portal guy. That's bringing a guy from Omaha North, and the value in that. And we talked about that a little bit after we even got done talking with him yesterday. Is there's a lot of other kids in that area too that where he's like, oh yeah, man, there's so much talent up here in this area, and they're starting to hear again from the staff. I mean, I don't even, again, this is all a forward looking thing. I don't know what was wrong 2 years ago or 3 years. I don't know why last year we lost those 4 Omaha kids. Each one, there's unique stories, and that's what recruiting is about. There's unique reasons why each individual kid makes the decision they make. But at the very least, we're never going to lose a kid because we didn't try hard enough to get them. And I think that's what Mickey Joseph has made enough statements about. And that's what we're on. I got a little bit of social media for you, Dave. And we had 3 different polls that kind of went out in the last week. And, it's appropriate that Rob was drinking out of his Kool-Aid because we were getting some feedback. We had, we had one guy, he wrote us an email and he said, someone on your pod should, instead of having red Kool-Aid stain on their lips, be the adult and tell the truth. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the truth is there, but I took that as a great opportunity to have a poll on Twitter and ask who that adult should be. And 41% of Redcasters responded that they think Rob should be the adult in the room. 29% said Boomer, 20% said Honky. And Dave, I think only 10% said you need to be the adult. I think it's probably because they already consider you the adult is what I would assume it is, right? I mean, that's got to be it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's all about how you word the question, right? And actually how whoever that emailer was, I mean, they state that, someone on your show is drinking too much Kool-Aid. And so you could interpret that as like, well, that's Redcast Rob. He needs to adult up because he's the one drinking too much Kool-Aid.
That's fair. That is 100% fair.
I mean, in my defense, I'm not lying. All right. I really feel the way that I feel. And, the truth really could hurt for a little while, but a lie hurts forever. And I can just tell you that, I'm not lying. Well, thanks. I was actually reading quotes about truth on the internet while we were doing this, because I mean,
the closest thing to honesty Rob's ever going to get.
I mean, that's not true. In college, they used to call me Honest Rob, but we won't get into the reasons for that at right now. But I mean, in all reality too, I want to believe it's my truth. I'm trying not to laugh.
Living in your world,
folks.
Yep. It is. Yeah. And yeah, I do. I got scarlet colored glasses, as we used to call that segment. Right. But the fact of the matter is that I feel like the team is really making all of the necessary changes that they need to make to at least move this team in that direction. Right. And like, if all you're going to want to do is look at the negativity, I mean, there is a great quote, if we want to look at this, is that there's no reason to look to the past because the future's in front of you. Right. And that's just kind of the view that I'm taking right now about it all. And I don't think that that's an unfair perspective, but I do want to point out that if anyone is ever expecting me to be an adult, jump on the YouTube, like while we're streaming, and look behind me. I have freaking comic books stacked to the top of my wall and pictures of Spider-Man. I mean, how much of an adult kid are you really going to? I really am. I am going to be 48 in March, and I am a giant child. I really am. I am probably the least mature 48-year-old you will ever meet in your entire life.
We can all agree with that. We all verify this. That is,
and I'm not even embarrassed about it. It's like, it's not even an insult to me.
Well, it's another social media question we had, and it ties into this. I wanted to get some Redcast feedback from the Redcasters, and basically I was asking something along the lines of, are we just right on the Kool-Aid? Are we too optimistic? Are we not optimistic enough? And 70% of you responded that we are just right on the Kool-Aid. Only 18% said that we're too optimistic, and 12% think that we're not optimistic enough. So for at least 12% of our viewers and, listeners out there, Rob, you need to really get onto the Kool-Aid.
I'm going to start stepping it up 112% for that 12%. I'm going to add an extra 12% to it. And I absolutely will continue to do that because I believe.
And you believe. And here's the last
78% thinks it's the right amount of Kool-Aid. Is that right?
70% think the right amount of Kool-Aid. 18% say we're too optimistic, and 12% say not optimistic enough.
So 7 out of 10 Redcasters we're right.
We're right on. I like that. Man. Hey, Dave, I'm going to ask you a question. This is our last one, and this was our last. We had some generation research, and gave them the options of. I'll start from the oldest baby boomers from 1946 to 64, Gen X 1965 to 80, Millennials 81 to 95, and Gen Z 1996 to 2010. What generations do you think listen to us the most? And give me your best percentage guess. Our listenership come from those 4 groups. If you're older or younger in those groups, I didn't include.
I'm guessing the millennials are the highest at now they might make up 40% of our audience. I don't know.
They are number 2 at 35%.
I'm gonna say it's Gen X, man.
Gen X 65 to 80 make up 39%.
Okay. All right.
Who gives us more? It's super close here. Who gives us more, Gen Z or the boomers?
I'll go
the
Gen
youngins
Z.
Or the old ones. Gen Z's 14% of our viewers and listeners are Gen Z, and the boomers are 13%. And
boomers actually 25%.
25%.
35% of this Redcast.
25%.
I am so good at those percentages tonight, man.
Math major Rob over there.
Man, it's all that 8th grade math I've been doing with my son lately. That's what it is.
So Dave, it was
interesting.
It wasn't a heavy football week, but we, as usual, we got to start with some football. But Dave, this is going to be a week of doing something a little different here. We're actually going to talk about another sport.
Well, and before we do that, and while we're on percentages and things like that, a discount is a percentage of, something. And if you would like to receive a discount on Hail Varsity subscription, make sure you go to hailvarsity.com, enter Redcast when you check out, and get a subscription. For those of you that are on our YouTube channel, Hail Varsity magazine comes out monthly. We'll send it right to your house, and you can go through the articles. There's some great stuff in there. You've got Babcock, you've got Aaron Sorensen, you've got all of the Hail Varsity writers on there, and it's actually a really good read. And not only that, but I really like the high gloss cover that they send everything on as a
it's like a poster. It's almost like a comic book.
Well, as a guy who's in the newspaper,
graphic novel, Dave.
As a guy who's in the newspaper / magazine industry himself and doing advertising, it's a really nice publication. And then you can also go check out the merch on there and get yourself some Redcast merch. Honky's got on a Redcast hat. You can get the Redcast sweatshirt. And then we've also got a social media contest going on right now. It's not really a contest, but one of the things that we're doing on Facebook, if you go to Facebook, is invite 10 or more of your friends. And if you take a screenshot of you inviting those people, because when it's up there, you just got to grab a screenshot, a screen grab on your computer or your smartphone, and post it in the comments of the pin post on our Facebook page. At the end of February, when the whole thing is done, I will take everybody who has entered that contest, and I'm going to raffle off a couple of Redcast merchandise prices that I'm putting together myself, and send those out to you guys. And I'll reach out to those people, and I may even go live on Facebook and give those away live on there. So, we're just trying to mix it up a little bit, but feel free to go check that out.
Dave, I was thinking I had like Wayne's World, the movie in my head where it's like you tell 10 people and they tell 10 people and they tell 10 people. Yeah. We're just,
the whole world will know about the Redcast.
And that's more math, actually.
We will catch up with
math.
North Platte. Dave, we will catch up with North Platte real fast if Rob's
I say watch out New Delhi personally. I mean, we're just going to blow back. Tokyo, we're coming for you.
Second large, yeah. Watch out, Hong Kong.
There you go.
All right. Well, let's take this around the Van Horn and talk some Husker baseball. The Huskers do start their season here on Friday afternoon, I believe, or evening, down in Texas, Huntsville, Texas in particular, in Sam Houston State. 4-game swing there. Spent quite a bit of time in Texas to start off the season. Go to TCU. I see that's in Arlington, Texas. Is that TCU's in Fort Worth? So I don't know if they're playing that in the old Texas Ranger ballpark or the new Texas Ranger ballpark or whatnot. But they are down there 2 straight weekends, and then the third weekend also in Arlington against UT Arlington and a few other Texas schools before they finally get home in early March to play Long Beach State. Honky, that's a much different schedule than last year. If you recall, we had an all Big Ten conference schedule, 44 games, I believe, all Big Ten. We did start in Texas last year. It was a bit delayed, but we played Purdue the first weekend, I remember. We started off pretty hot, but that was a very different season, right?
Yeah. This is going to feel more like a back to normal schedule again.
Yep.
So obviously not just a all Big Ten one. It's hard for me right now. I don't know what expectations I have. There's changes on the mound right away. I mean, this weekend they already announced just today. Kyle Perry is going to be starting on Friday against Sam Houston. On Saturday, righty Shea Shanaman and Dawson McCarville, and then on Sunday, righty Braxton Bragg. Boomer, you love that name. So we there's already
from the Civil War reenactment to.
But, so there's already some changes there. I'm curious, we have I think a coworker, Eric, is listening along and following along, and he asked a number of questions last week during our mailbag section. And we said we'd kind of wait a week on some of them. Dave, Boomer, you two specifically are kind of our baseball experts here. I'm going to go through coworkers, Eric's questions again. And, with a little bit more time here and week to think about it, we'll start with what would you like to see in order to say they have a successful year? Dave, I'll start with you. And I know we kind of answered this last week, but again, we're this much closer. Friday is the first pitch. And now that we know what the rotation looks like, what are some things that you think are in order for that successful year?
Yeah. I was reading an article that interviewed Will Bolt just earlier today or yesterday. And when he was talking about Big Ten play, right. And saying the perception and the reality of Big Ten baseball has changed a bit. We now are a multi-bid league, 3, 4, 5 teams a year. You got to feel pretty good about that. When we came into the league in 2011, that wasn't the case. You're getting pretty much the conference champion, maybe one at large. So, I mean, I think, if you just take the approach of if we can win the Big Ten, but not only does that automatically get us into the NCAA tournament, but it puts us in a good position, seating wise. I think that's where you go, right? I mean, obviously you want to be more competitive and build upon what we did last year in Fayetteville in that regional, but it starts by winning the Big Ten conference.
It's interesting. So we joined the conference in 2011, and I remember it being kind of a big deal when we got into the conference. The facilities that we had were pretty much, heads and tails above everybody, right? That were in the Big Ten, at least. You mentioned that it used to be a 1 or 2 bid league. Now it's a 4 to 5 bid league. What changed over those 10 years? Was it facilities getting better? Obviously Indiana kind of in the mid 2000 teens, had some of those College World Series teams. I mean, leading up to Michigan, going all the way to the title series. But what is the difference? Why is Big Ten baseball so much better now than it was 10 years ago? And maybe what effect did Nebraska have, hopefully a positive effect on making it better?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we didn't have a negative effect. I'll tell you that. I mean, I do think where you see where, we've been a part of those multi-bid years into the NCAA tournament many times, right? I mean, probably 5-6 years now we've made it since we've been in the Big Ten. And really, I think 5 of the last 7, I want to say, something like that. So, I mean, it's definitely a part of it, but it is a facility upgrade. There's no doubt about that. And that comes from Big Ten TV money. Pretty much around the entire league, they all have new stadiums. There's a few that are still not quite up to par, but if you look at Indiana, Minnesota, Purdue, even Iowa has upgraded their facilities. And they also not only have new stadiums, but they also have indoor training facilities, so they can practice more year round. I mean, in Nebraska's case, I mean, there's always somebody who has a better facility, but obviously the facility there that Alex Gordon helped fund, and Erstad's also contributed to the facilities. You can essentially play an indoor baseball game, the full infield, and it's netted for the outfield essentially. Allows them to really be more competitive against Southern schools. There's been other systematic changes in baseball too, right? At some point in that same time frame in the last 10 years, they changed the RPI, or now net rankings, where you got a more value about winning on the road than at home. And so with Big Ten teams playing so many games in the South for the first month of the season, essentially, we can build up our kind of computer rankings, and that makes a difference at the end of the day when you're actually picking the field. So
yeah,
I would also just really quick, one more thing, and then you can add more questions, is the coaching, right? I mean, the funding goes to the facilities, but it's also got better coaching and retained coaching. And I think the example of that is Eric Bakich at Michigan, which easily could have went somewhere else. Tracy Smith, when he had his run to Indiana, went to Arizona State. Bakich has stayed at Michigan, and that's a sign that Michigan is giving him the salary that keeps him there.
It's amazing. Nebraska has Childress now, the guy that we were hoping to really get 2-3 years ago when we got Bolt, to now have Childress here in a support role. Really, I mean, director of baseball operations, not really even an assistant coach for Bolt there. But just, it's awesome. It's great to have those kind of resources. And I think back 10 years ago, and just the Big Ten championship series being played in Indianapolis, I think, and Minneapolis, and maybe Columbus also. But it was like being played in front of like 5,000 people or 10,00 people for the whole series.
A couple hundred is what it felt like.
Well, for like the whole series though, like the whole the total number. And Dave, I'm sure it was you were with me, and maybe Boomer, I can't remember, but the title game at TD Ameritrade against Indiana. I mean, we were there, 20 plus thousand people. I mean, I think it was a record for college baseball, a championship game period, that's right, in the history of it. And to think that that's Big Ten. Now, of course, 90% of that is people wearing red, but I guess Indiana wears red too. So 100% of us were. Boomer, did we have a question?
No, weren't really questions, but more comments. Coworker Eric, a big baseball fan, wanted to kind of add on to what Dave was saying, but Schwarber's Indiana squad and Michigan's great year really come to mind to help the Big Ten outlook nationwide. So
yeah, the perception
has been
is
good
different
for the conference. Yeah,
I mean, there's other things that can continue to change, though. I mean, if they would happen to push back the start of the season even further, which has been a discussion, and Eric Bakich, the Michigan coach, proposed that and had quite a bit of support for it, because it could potentially not only benefit the northern schools, but actually you can get better attendance at the southern schools that already bring in 10 or 12,000 people, but they could even have bigger audiences and more TV exposure if you started the season later and kind of get out of the shadow of March Madness. And then there's I mean, if you're really committed to baseball, you look at the SEC, there's this thing with baseball where for various different reasons, including Title IX, but also other weird quirks in how scholarships work in certain sports, football not being one of them, but baseball is limited to 11.7 scholarships. Which is ridiculous, because Will Bolt has like 35 players on his roster. So we're talking about, on average, about a third of your tuition being paid for. So a lot of these players are paying to play, and that should change, first off, and make it more fair and equal across the athletic departments. But in the meantime, there's other schools in other states that find ways around that, right? The SEC is notoriously a baseball league, and they have all these different scholarship programs that help them fund scholarships for players through need-based reasons, which help them keep more of their players in state or whatnot, right? And I mean, those are things that Nebraska and other Big Ten schools aren't doing. So we're still playing at a disadvantage.
So Dave, could NIL, I guess, play a role in this, or how would that work?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that could be a really interesting thing for especially Nebraska baseball, which, I mean, Nebraska fans have proven that they're a top 10 fan base in attendance, right? When we have a good team, we can average, 5,000-6,000 people at Haymarket and have crowds of excess of 7 or 8 on the big weekends, right? So NIL money could be a real thing for Nebraska, just like it is for Nebraska volleyball, right? It's unique. I imagine there'd be, a handful of other SEC schools that would have that type of advantage, but almost no one else in the Big Ten even comes close. So yeah, it could be a big deal.
And to your point, I mean, baseball here, our fan base, it's a real differentiator. It can be a real differentiator nationally from everything from recruiting and NIL with this. We all know what sports are the money makers. Football is a money maker. Men's basketball nationally are money makers. But then when it gets to other sports, it's very hit and miss. Their UConn women's basketball can be a money maker, or some specific, a baseball team down south might be a money maker.
LSU, Mississippi State.
Yeah. Well, Nebraska has shown in the past, our baseball team has turned a profit and our volleyball team has turned a profit. And those are two unusual sports for that to happen. But it has happened some years, not every year. Baseball is primed at Nebraska now with Bolt here too, and the success. And to your point there, Dave, the fan base showing up, we started to see it last year. We started seeing it by the end of the season, and because it took a little bit of a break for a while there. I mean, I remember what it was like, during our College World Series years and everything. I mean, it was impossible. It felt like to get a ticket at Haymarket, and it's starting to get that way again. And I think this season there's hype coming into it. I mean, we're talking about it right now in preseason here. There's hype going into the year based off of how that team finished last year, and then all the positive momentum, Childress being back and being a part of it. I'm excited. I can't wait to see them, start playing this week. Even though I would rather see them start a month from now. I think this is ridiculously early, but hey, we're playing this week. Let's play.
Sure. Hey, Boomer, I think we have another comment or two on.
Yeah, first comment from Ken. First asking what everyone's drinking tonight. Rob, pretty sure we know what you're guzzling. Honky.
This is Bud Light Next. I'm doing the whole keto and all that stuff. Dave's wife, Katie, she'd be very proud of me. I was actually DMing with her during the Super Bowl when I was seeing all these like no carb.
Their slogan: 0 carb, 0 flavor.
I mean, it's super crisp light beer. It says. I
also call that water, Honky.
It's actually a beer flavored seltzer, Rob. That's
yeah. It's negative 4% alcohol, so it's delicious. I'm more awake today right now than I before.
It has less alcohol than my non-alcoholic beer.
I also bought one of those like Michelob, like a 12-pack of the Michelob Ultra seltzers that are supposed to be 0 carb too. So Ken, I don't know that this might put me like in the bad club or whatever that I'm drinking this, but Ken, this is what I'm officially having here.
Hey, Honky, you know how many carbs Busch Light has in it?
I have no idea.
Take a guess.
2.
3.
3. Does it?
3 carbs. Yeah. So I don't know how much more the Bud Light Next costs, but I'm just saying that. Well, 30-pack of Busch Light can go a long ways too.
I'm trying to stand your 30.
You and Hot Mess Husker can hang out and drink Busch Lights together, and I bet you that even has less carbs than Bud Light or whatever it is that you're drinking.
I'm drinking a classic Honky concoction called a Roman Coke. Honky, would you like to explain that one?
What do you put in a Roman Coke?
I don't know, Matt. Would you please elaborate?
So back in my college years, I was at maybe Iguanas or, one of the places downtown, and I was, 21, I'm sure. And just, I go up to, I had just turned 21. So I was new to the bars, and I'm talking to the bartender, and I was asking for a Roman Coke, number one. And then I asked him what's in he asked me if I'd want a rum and Coke, and I hear it as Roman Coke. So I go, well, what's in a Roman Coke? And he's like, rum and Coke. And I walked away from that going, it dawned on me, the light bulb in Honky's head. I was like, oh yeah, that's why they must call it that. But Roman Coke made total sense to me up until that point.
For the longest time, I'd like to actually, Boomer, you're the mixologist. You need to come up with a Roman Coke.
I was just thinking that I'm gonna have to come up with something, so maybe I'll work on that for another show here. But
It would have to have some kind of like an Italian, like what is it?
Maybe a nice Aperol or something like that.
Yeah, like
Aperol
I'll think of
type.
something on that. Yeah,
what is it?
What is
that other stuff that's like the licorice flavored stuff that they're always drinking over there?
Ouzo is Greek, if that's what you're thinking.
Well, no,
Yeah.
it's not
Jägermeister?
Ouzo, but they have the Italian version of that. I just can't remember off the top of my head right now.
I've had the Italian version of Jägermeister in Germany.
Fair enough. Yep.
That didn't taste good coming up. I'll tell you that.
All right.
Yeah,
Ken
well,
says
I
it's
had the- I
okay.
had
He
the
still respects
French
you, Honky,
version.
kind of. So that's
I
good.
appreciate that, Ken. Boomer,
Apple
would
juice.
you-
Coworker Eric
too.
also adds that 3 carbs adds up when you throw back a 30 pack. So keep that in mind.
That's
So-
right.
That's
And,
not how math works.
I'm trying to
As a
stay under
percentage.
30.
It's just
I'm trying to
3
stay under
carbs
30.
the whole time.
Yeah, I'm
All right,
trying to
one
stay
at a
under
time,
30
guys.
carbs a day. 30 carbs a day. So that's 10 beers, and I'd be done. But Boomer, as long as you call it Honky's Roman Coke when you make that drink,
Oh, we will.
I
Yeah,
would appreciate that.
that'll help. And
And
then
I can
coworker Eric
imagine the
also-
logo right now with Honky in a toga,
Mm.
graphics design swobes could have a lot of fun with this.
I'm not sure anyone would want to see that, but why not?
Mm.
So, and then
No.
coworker Eric brought up another interesting point for baseball, possibly adding that additional paid assistant to the staff, because I believe, what is it now? They're limited to 2 paid assistants by NCAA rules, and you
Yep,
can have a
that's correct.
third volunteer. That volunteer can't recruit. And I know this was a proposal that I think they voted on 2019-ish.
Yep.
2018-ish, somewhere around there. I know the SEC proposed it, but the Big Ten was one of the Power 5 conferences that voted it down for whatever reasons. I know the Big Ten is strapped for cash, and they just would have a hard time finding that extra money to pay for one additional coach to be able to go out and recruit and
Yeah.
work
Makes
in
no
baseball.
sense why the
That would
Big
be something
Ten-
I'd like to see the conference reconsider if it
Yeah.
comes up again.
Sambuca. That's
Okay,
what
there
it
we go.
was,
Yeah, that's good.
Sambuca. So you got to do it
Sambuca.
with something like Coke and rum and Sambuca or something.
We're back on that now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
The light bulb went off in Rob's head there. So I
It,
just saw
it
so,
usually
yeah.
takes a few minutes. It's like a fluorescent light. It takes a while to warm up.
So with the paid assistant thing, I mean, Curtis Ledbetter is, I think, director of baseball operations or something like that, and I think he was the one that was trying to be that third assistant, a paid assistant, essentially. He's still with the program, though, fortunately. But I mean, I one of the problems that highlights, and it's odd that the Big Ten is the one that voted against that, but the NCAA at the Division I level of baseball has 340 programs or something like that, very similar to the basketball number. And so you have a bunch of baseball programs that do not have the operating budgets that a Nebraska or any of the SEC schools do. And so, I mean, maybe that it makes sense to them. But I mean, again, you're regulating across 2 completely different financial models that it just simply needs to change. There's a really interesting YouTube. I found it on YouTube. It's a documentary called Uneven, and it lays out all the reasons why they need to fix college baseball, essentially, with this scholarship issue and other things. So it's worth the watch.
Well, I'm sure that third assistant was just totally out of Wisconsin's budget too, so they decided to push. For
They've been
voting
saving
down.
for years.
They have been. Yep. No.
All right, Hawk. Is there other questions?
Well,
here?
yeah. So, I mean, we talked about some of the expectations. Coworker Eric had a question about, I mentioned who the rotation is going to be this weekend, but he said the baseball team will have to fill 2 of the 3 open weekend starting spots. Who do you look to fill those spots? And obviously we talked about who those 4 are for this weekend, but talk a little bit about the starting pitchers, the bullpen. I know Bolt, he was talking about Colby Gomes is probably going to begin the season as the closer. Dave, what does the pitching look like for Nebraska as we start this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no surprise that Kyle Perry is kind of, at least perceived as the initial ace of the staff. A lot of experience there, coming back from Tommy John surgery, but a lot in these day and ages, that's actually seems to be a positive. They usually come back stronger than ever. So it's hopefully that's the case with Kyle. A lot of promise earlier in his career, though, and I think you have to be optimistic there. I think the other 2 spots, Shanneman makes a lot of sense. He was our Sunday starter, but then it'll be interesting to see how this plays out over the course of the year. keep in mind we have Drew Christo on the roster, and Drew, very highly regarded baseball prospect, easily could have chose to go in the major league draft. He was drafted, but late enough that he obviously chose to stay at Nebraska. And that was a bit of a surprise, actually. I think he was kind of generally considered a top 250 type draft pick, and fell way behind that because he likely told professional teams that, if they weren't going to hit a certain number, he was going to go to Nebraska. And sure enough, here he is. So we have him for 3 years, and he's 6'4", 230, throws heat, has multiple pitches he can throw. And I think I could likely see him being a weekend starter by the end of the season, if not earlier.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. How do you, if you were coaching him, if you're the pitching coach, I mean, how do you work him, a player like that, true freshman in, how do you work him in over the course of the season? What do you expect this weekend out of him and then down the line?
Well, I'm not the expert there, but you do have Rob Childress on staff now, so
doesn't hurt.
That does not hurt. Rob is one of the best pitching coaches in all of college baseball, and he has been for over 2 decades, and has sent a lot of his pitchers to the major leagues. And so Drew Christo is in good hands with that coaching staff. So I'll trust what they're going to do with him. I absolutely want to break him in, but you're not going to want to throw somebody's arm off anyway. So, I mean, I think they're just going to try to take this easy, get him comfortable with the surroundings and see where he can go. But his stuff is electric and could really be a huge asset as the season goes on. You mentioned Colby Gomes, who was out last year, and he's coming back. And, he had great stuff on his fastball, just not enough movement on it. I'll be really intrigued to see what that looks like coming back with a year off. Because we'll need that closer, because Spencer Schwellenbach obviously is off to the pros.
And you mentioned Childress. I called him, I think, the director of operations earlier. He's the current director of player development for NU. That's his role this year.
Yeah, so he's not the official pitching coach, obviously. That's Christie, right? But both Christie and Bolt have strong connections to Childress, and Rob will be right there, I think. So
I'm sure he'll be able to help out just fine.
Yeah.
Dave, do you see them too? Because as you're saying, like limited innings and obviously not throwing his arm out. We got him for 3 years. Do you see them maybe trying to work him in as like a setup role, something along those lines? And again, I'm more of like a Major League Baseball kind of guy, and the college baseball game for me has just kind of been slowly coming to me the last couple of years, watching a little bit more of it here and there. So do they really have those sort of roles? I mean, or even coming in for long relief? Like, could you see this kid like pitching, maybe seeing him 2-3 times during a weekend, only putting in maybe, 2 or 3 innings worth of work? Or how do you see that?
It's quite possible. I mean, we have had Nebraska pitchers take on that role. I mean, most famously against us last year, the Arkansas long reliever essentially pitched, well over half of their innings, and ultimately they kind of bit them. But it definitely is happening at the college level, where you're going to have hold guys essentially, and you're going to have a kind of a long relief team as well. I mean, they could start them there. They could start them as a midweek starter at some point, where you start them against, on a Tuesday or Wednesday versus a non-con, and then you kind of build from there, I think. I just think he's too talented to keep him off the pitching mound for that long. I think he's going to prove his worth sooner than later.
Something Rob brought up before we were recording, he was just looking at the roster, and we talk about this in football all the time, the in-state talent. And we've talked about it in basketball, how we've missed on a lot of in-state talent the last few years. But baseball, Bolt made a point of that. When he was at A&M, he would recruit some of our in-state talent down there to A&M. But he made a point when he came here saying, we're going to recruit local. And Christo being just one of the examples, the amount of in-state talent that's on this team. I mean, this is a team that, we're going to be favored to, be at the top of the Big Ten Conference. And there's a lot of Nebraska kids on there. That's got to make you excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to see a lot of young guys out there, I mean, it's excited to see Nebraska, being picked likely to win the Big Ten, having top 25, top 30 type spots in some of these preseason polls. There was a lot of changeover though, right? Though, I mean, we already mentioned Spencer Schwellenbach, which was Big 12 Player of the Year and the best closer we've had in a long time. Guys like Joe Acker, Jackson Hallmark, Mojo Hagee. I mean, the list goes on and on. We had a lot of talented guys out there that had a lot of experience because of the extra COVID year too, right? But because of the kind of the extra COVID year, we do have quite a bit of experience returning, just not maybe quite as much starting experience. So it's going to be interesting to see how that transitions. But yeah, I think you're right, Honk. I mean, the local talent is evident. We've been losing some of our best players to other baseball schools for not just to Texas A&M, but for decades, right? I mean, goes back to Kyle Peterson going to Stanford and all that type of stuff, right? And so now the more we can keep in here, the better off we are. And the strengths of when Nebraska was at its peak was we had a lot of good local talent. So,
well, some of these guys even went to other schools out of high school and then came back, didn't they, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. And Will Bolt's done a good job of trying to get some of those guys back. Cade Povich last year was a great example of that, ultimately being our Friday night starter, but wasn't really recruited to Nebraska, went to Arizona JUCO and comes back up and has a phenomenal season and gets picked top 100 last year, ahead of, I'm forgetting the Arkansas pitcher's name, Cops. Is that right?
Yeah.
He picked
Cobb,
one spot ahead of a Cops. So Kevin Cops. So, yeah.
Well, whoever watched that game obviously saw something in him, right? So maybe you can give Cops credit, for getting drafted a little bit higher, because but I mean, and it's 50% of the roster, so is all from Nebraska on here.
Sure. Well, I mean, it helps. Keep in mind, 11.7 scholarships. It helps to be an in-state because you're paying less for tuition. You're spreading that 11.7 around. If you can pay in-state, and they're closer to home, all that type of stuff, maybe even from Lincoln, you're cutting significant costs away, right? So. Well, we do have a Canadian though, Honk. I don't know if you saw that.
He's from Wyoming, Ontario.
Yeah.
Wow.
Across the border from California, Quebec. So,
but we've had a lot of success with Canadians, Honk, if you remember, right?
Well, I've been to Wyoming, Illinois before.
Adam Stern, John Cole, I think both of them were Canadians that saw the College World Series. So.
So Dave, I guess maybe to close this out here, this weekend, then what's your expectations for these first four games? I mean, where do you think where are we standing, 7 days from now? What would be what's good, reasonable, what would be bad?
4-0 undefeated. I'm just kidding.
I would say to temper your expectations for the first couple of weeks. Not that I don't think this team could be really good, but in a more traditional scheduling setup here, Sam Houston State has been practicing outdoors for as long as they could, and just are probably more in game shape from that perspective than Nebraska. I'd love to see us go 4-0, Rob, but I would take 2-2 just as well. I think you just got to be able to kind of just get warmed up here a little bit. I mean, they should be more talented than Sam Houston State, but Sam Houston State, I mean, all those schools down in the South play good baseball, so I wouldn't look past them at all. And then you have TCU right after that, and TCU's ranked. They've been down a little bit at times, but they've have a really good tradition over there the last 2 decades. So I mean, it's a tough 2 weeks to get going, but I think you just got to knock off the rust and really try to build momentum for March when we have a really long homestand. Hopefully there's some good weather there and you can start collecting some wins before you get to conference.
Yeah, coworker Eric actually commented on YouTube too and said need to go at least 3-1. And if I wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid, I would probably agree with him there. 3-1 would be a really good start to the season.
I'll take 2-2.
And Ken McCone, I think that's how you say his name. He asked and he asked if we were going to be bowl eligible by Monday. So I don't know where he's getting that from, even though I did ask Kevin Williams what a realistic expectation was, because I told him bowl eligible by week 7, latest week 8, and he agreed with me and said that was actually a realistic expectation to have. So, the players are drinking the Kool-Aid too. Just saying.
Not during practice, we hope. But,
No, hopefully, no. Yeah. Gatorade, hopefully.
And hopefully Ken
Powerade
Kesey has nothing to do with any of it, as I'm sitting here in my Grateful Dead shirt.
So anyway, I just want to say that, I mean, some of our best teams under Erstad, even before with under Anderson, haven't always come out of the gate on fire. It's tough because you go down and play in Texas or Arizona or Florida or whatever, and you're playing teams that are in mid-season form, right?
Yep.
And typically it takes a little bit longer for us to get going. It's not that we shouldn't beat San Houston State 3 times out of 4. It's just they have an advantage right now against us.
Yeah.
Right? So,
well, didn't we have like San Diego State even scheduled to come to Lincoln like in March, and then they backed out of it just like a month or two ago? And, so we were trying to get Southern teams to come up here early in the season, but that's hard to do. And as I recall, pre-COVID, the year or two prior to it, we actually had like Arizona State come here for a series in May, right at the very end of the season. And I want to even say maybe Baylor maybe did that too, or we were trying to schedule that. I don't know if it was
we definitely had Arizona State. Year. Yeah.
So, I mean, the idea of you got to get creative a little bit with scheduling. It's hard to get teams to come up here to Hawks Field when, I mean, even a month from now, you can't always tell if you're going to be able to actually play or not. I mean, that's so
especially early. I think it's easier to get them to come up here later in the year because teams that aspire to make the College World Series likes taking the trip, right? They like flying into Omaha, driving by the stadium, doing all those type of things. It kind of, from a motivational and just from a familiarity standpoint, they see an advantage to that. So, but it is tough to get teams to come up in the month of March, because not only is it potentially cold, there's a weather factor there where they may not even get the game in, right? And it seems risky to them. So,
but we're the San Diego of the Big Ten, Dave.
Well, often we are. You're right. I mean, trust me. I've been to games in March when it's been 70 degrees. I've also been to games in March when it was 32. So,
yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's Colorado too. I mean, I've seen opening
that's
day.
That's why there's not a lot of college baseball played in Colorado.
I was gonna say, yeah, the opening day for the Rockies, there was snow on the ground one year. So
yes, I remember that.
Yeah, it was like last year.
No, it wasn't. I was at the game last year, Rob. It was beautiful out.
Oh, Rob doesn't remember last year. That's the problem. He's got his Grateful Dead shirt on.
The last 3 years have been the same year, so I don't.
That ain't just Kool-Aid. So.
We'll see if they actually have opening day at Coors Field this year. The way the Major League Baseball negotiations are going. So, yeah,
that's one of the reasons why I'm focusing so much on college and trying to pick up on that game right now. So,
speaking a little bit of hockey, our first game against Sam Houston State apparently is on ESPN Plus. Okay. So if you subscribe to ESPN Plus or have the Disney package or whatever, you can actually watch that game on Friday. There is a slight chance, I would say, that if for some reason Major League Baseball does not start their season on time, ESPN may start to look for content. This happened a decade or so ago when the NHL got locked out, and there was a bunch of extra baseball games on. And so
Nebraska played when Nebraska played Texas one time. Johnny Dorn was pitching, and that was on ESPN. The flagship station. It was on ESPN
One on like
a Friday night.
Any NHL, which was a big part of their contract at the time.
Well, one of the things that ESPN Plus has been doing this year too, with not only with college football, which obviously it seemed like every game was on ESPN Plus at one point, or the Hulu. College basketball is the same way. Like UNC, what they do, they just stream the game from wherever they are, and ESPN picks it up.
You're talking about Northern Colorado, not UNC.
Northern Colorado,
not
UNC,
North Carolina.
North Carolina, but UNC Northern Colorado. They're streaming every basketball game on ESPN Plus. You can just go on there and watch every single one.
So Nebraska typically is not on ESPN Plus once it goes into conference.
Yeah,
because all the conference games are going to be Big Ten Plus.
Yeah, of course, and so make sure you get your subscriptions now because there's probably a deal. But my point is that some of these non-con games, they could start streaming them all on ESPN Plus too, because all they need to do is just pick up a stream, right? And I mean, really, it's all local.
Have the rights,
and it's all local content too. Like there's stuff for local restaurants from Greeley being advertised on these games. It's hilarious. But it's still there. It's like one camera you can see like panning back and forth.
It's an ad sales guy's dream, really.
And it's Greeley, so it's probably some guy with like a VHS recorder, really, just standing there on it with it on his shoulder. So
Really known for its fine dining, Rob?
We're really known for the Mexican food here. I'm not gonna lie, it's some of the best I've ever had.
They have a famous Mexican restaurant there called the Rio. Yeah.
Well, that's not Mexican food to have. That's Tex-Mex. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sure, Rob. Let's move on. Anything else we want to talk about baseball wise?
I think we've covered baseball pretty well for this week. I'm looking forward to talking about it next week and talking about the games in reverse and actually be able to talk about some baseball there. So anyways, go Big Red this weekend. Hopefully we can get to that 3-1, 4-0. You know, that would be wonderful.
Hopefully we're talking about that next week.
Yes.
All right, guys, let's get out of here with some parting shots, and I will start with Boomer.
Well, first off, I guess I would just like to borrow from local media host Jack Mitchell when referring to Husker women's basketball. I hope you all got to watch them basically dismantle top 10 Indiana the last day. And when it comes to the AP poll, just rank them, you cowards. I mean, for goodness sakes, what do they have to do? I mean, they played great. They're looking good. Finish off the rest of the season. If you haven't watched the Husker women play, please do. You still got some games left, and we should be looking good to make the NCAA tournaments. So hats off to them this season.
That would be awesome. All right, Rob, what do you got?
Well, since yesterday was Valentine's Day, I just want to say a little poem, and that would be, Huskers are red. Husker football makes me blue, but I'll keep on drinking Kool-Aid. Redcast Nation, I love you.
Is that a haiku, Rob? Or an attempt at
That's
one?
more math, Dave. And I
Really even a sonnet, Dave. I don't know.
It might have been a sonnet. Good point, Boomer. Right?
I don't think it's 575. I didn't count that, so I
right. All right, Hockey, please get us out of here.
Yeah. Boomer already hit mine with the women's basketball team. And
yes, we stole a honky hot take for a change. Neat.
And they've destroyed 2 top 10 teams, ranked this damn team already. Want to give a congrats to former Husker quarterback Joe Daly. He's moving up the coaching ranks, going to the Carolina Panthers. He was at Boston College as a wide receiver coach. Paul Feinbaum today. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I agree with something Paul Feinbaum said, and Husk guys had tweeted this thing out. I think it was from today. I don't know if they were tweeting an old video, but Feinbaum was asked the greatest team of all time, and he said the 1995 Huskers. And so it makes me throw up in my mouth to say this, but I agree with Paul Feinbaum. And last but not least, starting tomorrow, February 16th at noon and through February 17th at noon, Nebraska NU has the Glow Big Red 24 hours of giving. You can go to glowbigred.unl.edu. You can give to a number of different great organizations and everything that go on within the university. We're big on supporting, obviously for obvious reasons here, we're big on supporting the University of Nebraska across all of its academic and athletic functions. And this is a great way of doing it. So Redcasters, you always show up strong and do it tomorrow if you can. Glow Big Red.
All right. Great stuff, guys. Great stuff. All right. For now, let's call that a Go Big Redcast.
Go Big Red.
GBR.